Again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphics, no watches, warnings, or advisories for the public zones here. Anywhere in the state, again, that's for the public zones. Different story out here in the Aleutians and Bering Sea as far as marine areas go with the storm force winds, gale force winds, and hurricane force winds. They'll expected late tonight and into tomorrow out that area. Otherwise, satellite imagery here showing a trough that brought some light snow throughout the day yesterday to the Arctic coast. That's currently here, at least a picture time at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Most of the bulk of the moisture into the Northwest Territories here. Some cloudiness and flurries or light snow showers extending back almost into the Fairbanks area there. But that area, the main showery areas or flurries extending from about Eagle on down toward the Tok River Valley. And that's all continuing to move eastward, so not much going on there. High pressure made for a very nice day over interior Alaska today, all the way down along the southeast coast. Did have some areas of dense fog this morning in areas like Klawock and a few other locations there, but clearing out, showers early on, only brought 1/100 of an inch to Heidelberg, associated with a weak trough that's out of the area now into British Columbia. And then this system down here, south of the Aleutians, pulled some moisture up to the northwest here. Missed most of Kodiak Island, except for possibly Sitkinak or AKwx as far as rainfall goes, but about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation to the Alaska Peninsula here. South side areas could have had as much as 1/2 an inch today, but a little bit more than yesterday. And winds actually didn't get as strong as I thought they were going to yesterday. I only saw gusts 30 miles an hour at AKwx and anywhere from 20 to 30 miles an hour here on the south side of the peninsula, and even lighter north with light winds over the eastern Bering Sea. And you can see the cloud shield here associated with that next developing storm system, the remnant or the old typhoon or the typhoon that hit Japan coming northeastward. And this warm front moisture here spreading over the western Aleutians with rain occurring today west of Amchitka Island out towards Shimia. Winds haven't really increased that much. And this is the old frontal boundary here from yesterday, pretty weak. And actually it's about to get absorbed there as that big storm moves into the Bering Sea and develops. And looking at that again, a few skiffs of snow early today hit the far eastern Beaufort Sea coast with this area cloudiness. And that's already ended. And on the chart today, you can see high pressure up here over the upper Yukon Valley. And then this upper trough actually here, not much at the surface, this is the dashed line representing the upper level trough axis, pulling eastward there, and that's brought that isolated snow shower condition, the cloudiness here kept it in north of the Alaska Range over the eastern interior. Otherwise, clearing out North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, eastward there into the northern Panhandle. Actually, all the way down toward Dixon Entrance there. Still some clouds this afternoon, but precipitation ended. May have been a few light snow showers up over the Northwest Mountains. Otherwise, kind of breezy here, southern Kodiak Island, and then throw the rain in along with the gusty winds, mainly along and south of the Alaska Peninsula there. Clearing out quite nicely here under high pressure and light offshore flow, well off the southwest coast, almost to St. Matthew Island, and kind of a narrow band there, keeping it mostly cloudy over the Pribilofs, at least at the time the satellite was taken today over St. Paul and St. George. And some clearing extending down to Nikolsky. And then here's the southwest flow here with the low center roughly. One of them, actually there's one farther southwest there. Moving, well, this one coming onto the chart here anyway, that's spreading the rain, possibly moderate to heavy, into the western Aleutians today. And moving that on to tonight, you'll see quite intense low pressure area develops and pulls northeastward here. And you got the tropical moisture with the typhoon is going to link up with some cold air coming down out of the Russian Far East here, and that's really going to generate and start to drop those pressures. So winds definitely increasing, especially after midnight over the western Aleutians Bering Sea, with the actually the position of the low to about this position by 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. So probably later tonight, not late tonight, but probably late this evening, winds will really come up over the western Aleutians, and in advance of the front pushing eastward, rain and definitely gale force winds, gusts maybe 70 miles an hour ahead of the front at Adak and eventually Atka, and maybe even stronger winds coming around the back side of that system with a tight pressure field. Head east here, and you're under high pressure axis actually here between that system and then the one off to the south of Kodiak Island here. Pretty good gradient with this, but it's mostly south of everywhere. Still catching Kodiak. Chance of rain, say south of Marmot Bay or Chiniak Marmot Bay area southward, we have the best chance. North, no chance. And winds strongest on the southern and southeast side of Kodiak Island. So you're kind of right on the edge of things there, almost cutting the island in half as far as weather goes. Clouds into the Gulf of Alaska, and as you get up toward the North Gulf Coast, those will dissipate and should be pretty nice evening here, but winds increasing even over the northern and eastern North Gulf Coast. Winds tonight start to pick up after midnight toward morning along the south coast of the Panhandle. Precipitation, though, should stay to the west through tonight. Still some flurries possible there, north side of the far eastern Alaska range, otherwise mostly clear with light winds over all interior Alaska. Taking a look at tomorrow, this front can use to drive eastward here, and it's going to slam the southern southeast coast pretty good in the afternoon, or it'll hit it better than it will up to the north, with rain heavy at times moving in and winds 40 to 50 knots coming up on the south coast there. So could see gusts 60, 65 miles an hour. And a band of rain will extend westward here, right to the east side of Kodiak Island, getting right on the edge of it there. But it looks like a pretty good chance at some point in the day tomorrow you'll see rain, definitely cloudy skies, winds not a problem. And no change over the interior, mostly clear from the Arctic there all the way down into the Prince William Sound area, eastward to Yakutat, and sunshine southwest interior. Look for the clouds and wind to increase, and even the chances of rain tomorrow afternoon as that low deepens to 952 millibars and tracks slowly northeastward there. The front's still a fair distance off the coast, but pushes across the Fox Islands into the Alaska Peninsula. Really tight gradient here on the southern quadrant of that storm. And that's where the hurricane force winds will be, the sustained 65 knot winds, with gusts anywhere from 80 to 100 miles an hour. And it's just grazing the north side of the Aleutians there. And so you'll probably be, they're under the hurricane force wind warning tomorrow for the central Aleutians in this area, and definitely a bigger area of the Bering Sea. And that'll be dropping off late in the afternoon. Winds coming down, probably down to gale force with shimmying at 2 late in the day. And then a little bit of a drop off here behind the front of the eastern Aleutians. But winds continue to increase, as I mentioned, actually even up to St. Lawrence Island, but nothing too serious yet. And then that front the next day, the low center tracks almost due north to the Russian Far East coast on Tuesday, the front weakening considerably. And the warm air looks like just rain periods up for St. Lawrence Island after could be some stronger winds tomorrow night, and less of that action here, but still cloudy and damp. Chance of rain here along the southwest coast. Next system developing out in this area, more wind and rain, but nothing like you'll see later tonight and tomorrow. And another system here approaches the southeast coast with another round of increasing wind and rain, mostly on the south coast. The old front here washes out over the Gulf of Alaska and also as it moves inland. And for lows tonight, upper 20s to near 40 across the southeast coast, so pretty varied and variable for the lows tonight in that area, as they usually are. And down to 10, Copper River Basin, -1, Arctic Village to 9 above at Anatuvik. Otherwise, lower to mid-30s to near 40 to mid-40s out over the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Highs for tomorrow, highs for tomorrow. I almost thought these were the lows. Mid to upper 20s on the east side here, teens for the highs, mid-teens for the Brooks Range. Otherwise, lower 30s, Tanana Valley, 40s to lower 50s, or actually mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, and lower to mid-50s out over the Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula, near 50 for the Pueblos, 41 for St. Lawrence Island, 20s near 30 on the Arctic coast. Lows the following morning, shade below 0, the eastern Brooks Range, a shade above there for the eastern interior, all the way down to the Copper River Basin. Lows above freezing southwest coast and St. Lawrence Island, with lows for the Panhandle mostly in the 30s to lower 40s. And south central Alaska in the 20s to mid 40s for Kodiak. Placed by highs only 2 degrees higher in your forecast low there for Kodiak Island on Tuesday afternoon with 48. Lower 50s outer coast of the Panhandle, teens to lower 20s up to the northeast, and 35 to 45 south central Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic here on Monday morning. We've got VFR for the southeast coast. Marginal VFR, though, creeping up to the south coast there from roughly near or just south of Sitka, down along part of Prince of Wales Island. Otherwise, VFR here right up across the Gulf, Prince William Sound, southern Alaska, all the way up to the Seward Peninsula, and Kotzebue right on the edge of the marginal VFR, this farther to the north. Mostly VFR for the north slope. Arctic coast looking pretty good. Possible IFR here over the 40-mile country there, and that's actually marginal VFR possibly as far north as Eagle, and a band of IFR here with the main frontal boundary out over the Bering Sea. For the afternoon, that dissipates and vanishes here, so we're left with pretty good VFR here from areas west of Nikolsky, AKwx, Kiska Island, Amchitka, the Shimianatu. A really nice afternoon tomorrow. Marginal VFR, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, up along the coast here, and marginal VFR up to St. Lawrence Island. Then you're into the VFR here, all of mainland Alaska, including the North Slope and Arctic coast. Southeast coast, with that system pulling up, marginal VFR into the southern panhandle, at least by tomorrow afternoon, with IFR right in its heels. And then, for Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday morning, I got the days mixed up there. Okay, let me repeat this. Monday afternoon, marginal VFR slips into the southern panhandle, at least definitely by late afternoon, maybe even earlier, and then extends across Gulf Kodiak Island, VFR over the interior. Now, Tuesday morning, we've got mostly VFR across all of interior Alaska, all the way out to the Arctic coast and beyond. Marginal VFR now pushing inland a little bit here, up into the southwest hills and into the western Yukon Delta, the St. Lawrence Island, breaking out, becoming VFR for the Perlofs Monday night into early Tuesday. IFR here now pretty well entrenched in across the southeast coast, or in the southern southeast coast, and marginal VFR continuing across the Gulf to Kodiak Island, and then a pretty good break here, southern Bering Sea and Aleutians, more marginal VFR out west. And for the afternoon, that batch of moisture comes eastward here in the westerly flow, and this one narrows out really thin here, dissipating but holding together pretty well from the Aleutian Range, Bristol Bay, right up there to St. Lawrence Island. VFR over the interior areas until you get to the Copper River Basin here, down to the North Gulf Coast. Looks pretty marginal up into the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, mostly marginal there for the Panhandle. Passes tomorrow, looking really well. Brooks Range, both Anaktuvuk and Again, VFR. Western Alaska Range, Lake Clark, Merrill, VFR, rainy, same forecast. Sailing's visibility is unlimited, with VFR flying conditions also in the forecast for windy. And for Isabel, looks pretty good with VFR conditions. Same thing for Mentasta and Tanita, VFR. Portage, also VFR, Chilkoot and White, looking good. Tanita, VFR, and Portage, VFR, with Chilkoot and White, also VFR. Freezing levels at the surface right down to the North Gulf Coast here to the coastline tomorrow, into midway into Cook Inlet with 2,000 feet, just a little farther to the south, but over the northern panhandle. And out here to the west, again, southerly flow pulling 12,000 feet back up to the AKwx area. And far as icing goes, that moisture is slipping on north and eastward here, and a band of considerable moderate rime icing with that big storm just to the west there. Be pushing eastward to about this position in the afternoon, icing free over the interior. That other storm brings a chance of icing to the east side of Kodiak Island. The heavier stuff definitely pushing in ahead of the frontal boundary in across the southern panhandle. And for the upper air chart, 18,000 foot wind flow chart, here's the trough with the big storm there over the Bering Sea. Upper level ridging holding over the northern interior, and at 9,000 feet, strong winds here, 70 knots across the Aleutians, high as 80 knots there, southern Bering Sea, and 50 knots developing along the southwest coast, 60 knots for the Panhandle, 3,000 feet, much the same pattern here. Strong winds of that storm, mostly on its southern quadrant there down to the Aleutians. Still strong though on the northeast and east side, 35 to 55 knots, and increasing winds to the southeast coast translates into considerable moderate chop here from Elfin Cove right on down across the southern Panhandle, Kodiak Island, possible severe out over the Bering Sea into the Pribilofs and the western Aleutians.
Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us. Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific Garbage Patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. The sea ice analysis for today. Not a lot of difference from yesterday. Not much change in the forecast either. Still, no ice showing up along even the eastern Beaufort Sea coast and south of the Barren Islands. Was a little bit seen on the Russian Far East coast, but nothing here for the Arctic coast. Still looking within the next week or by the end of the next 6-7 day period, we might start seeing some ice show up here on the east side. Coastal water forecast: storm coming in, plying toward the south coast tomorrow afternoon. So full gales here, or gales all along the coast. East 40 to 45 knots, central and south coast. You see the 45 knot winds and gale force winds coming into Clarence Strait out of the southeast at 35 knots. Seas building to 12 feet. Small craft advisories, central, northern, inside waters with good gale force gusts there, northern Lynn Canal up to 45 knots. And for Tuesday, 25 sustained, northern Lynn Canal, 5-foot seas. Gale force northeast gusts to 35 knots for Stevens Passage, and southeast 30 with gusts to 40 in the afternoon for Clarence Strait. Otherwise, the south coast here looking at southeast winds 25 to 30 knots. The north coast, east 35 knots with higher gusts. And for Prince William Sound, northeast winds 20 knots tomorrow, and seas not too bad, 3 feet, but small craft advisories with a stiff breeze at 30 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast, seas 15 feet. And gale force northeast winds here for the western North Gulf Coast, down across the Barren Islands. Northeast winds at 30 knots, southern Cook Inlet, Chemichac Bay, seas running 8 to 10 feet, northeast at 20, north of the Forelands. North 20 here for northern Cook Inlet on Tuesday. South side here at Cook Inlet, 30 knots out of the north. Same thing for Chemichac Bay with still 8 to 10 foot seas. Northeast 30 for the Barren Islands, and gales for the North Gulf Coast. East-northeasterlies at 35, seas 16 feet. Prince William Sound much lighter at 15 out of the northeast. Kodiak Island, northeast 40 knots, seas 14 to 20 feet. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, northeast 40 knots, 20-foot seas. And south side of the peninsula to Cape Sarachef there, south 25. And the Bering Sea side, southeast 35. Bristol Bay, east winds coming up to 30 knots. For the day on Tuesday, north 30 there for Bristol Bay, and then westerly gales blowing across and along the Alaska Peninsula, 35 knots on the Bering Sea side, 40 knots Pacific side. and then more of a northwest direction on the 40-knot winds as you slide up towards Sitkinak, Kodiak Island, north winds 30 knots with 10 to 16-foot seas. And for the Aleutians, again, the west winds here, 55 to 60 knots, and just north of the chain here, just outside of the marine boundary of the Aleutians, is where the hurricane force wind warning is late tonight and into tomorrow here. So just, you're right on the edge there. We definitely see storms that'll extend into the central Aleutians and the north side of Unimak Island, otherwise full gales for Unalaska Island. And then for the outlook on Tuesday, west to maybe southwest at 40 for the Fox Islands, west 40 to 45. Central Aleutians will seas still up to 28 feet here in the north of Adak and Atka, and then 45 to 50 knot west-southwesterlies. There's you head out to the western zones. Pribilofs tomorrow, southeast 45, maybe 50, but right now we'll go 45. That extends up to St. Matthew Island. South winds coming up to 40 knots along the coast here, and 35 knots for gales for St. Lawrence Island. Following day, west-southwest winds at 50 knots. Good storms coming into the Pribilofs, St. Matthew Island. Seas up to 36 feet there over the near the Pribilofs, and southwest 30, Kuskokwim Delta Coast, Yukon Delta Coast, south 35, east 45, St. Lawrence Island. Central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southerlies 10 to 15, west side 20 knots, and then things increase here from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales, southeast 25, increasing to 30 knots. And for the following day, now we got gales here on the far eastern Beaufort Sea coast at 35 knots. Otherwise, 30 knots, fall back to about 20 on the central coast, and then back to small craft advisories on the west side at 25. And 30-knot winds there from Cape Thompson on down to Wales. Tonight, big storm coming in, deepening storm here into the southwest and then western Bering Sea front advancing eastward. Another system clipping Kodiak Island. This one will plow into the Panhandle tomorrow afternoon with those gale force winds and rain, heavy at times, south side. And this storm also into the Bering Sea hits the Pribilofs and the Aleutians with the hurricane force winds mostly north of the Aleutians, fair over the interior. And the next day, that storm really washes out as the main low center hangs back and heads north. Another one over the southern Bering Sea.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.